So, friend of the channel is back with another FNAF video. This time, we are talking about FNAF Security Breach, and I'll be honest, I don't know what more we could be proven wrong. I don't know what more we could say about FNAF Security Breach, considering this is a game that is now 5, coming up to 6 years old at this point, and I feel like we have solved everything that needs to be said about the game and everything, of who Gregory is. Charlotte the Puppet is a poltergeist possessing the Pizzaplex. All the animatronics, the Glamrocks, are tied to the VR/AR glitch trap mimic software, mimic program, and that's what causes them to be evil. And the only animatronic that is not evil is Freddy, and that's because at the beginning of the game he was booted in safe mode. I feel like everything we have solved, but apparently there's stuff we've been wrong about. So let's just jump into it.
Secret of the Mimic
Just
had
like
this
a time
excellent
traveling
feeling
ball
of
pit.
dread throughout the entire game, but there's another stranger feeling that many of us had while playing. Deja vu. Many of the locations of Murray's Costume Manor felt oddly familiar, almost reminiscent of the Security Breach Pizzaplex. And though both buildings were likely built in the same spot, why are some of the rooms themselves nearly identical? Well, when I tried to figure that out, I came across something that might piece together how the entire Mimic timeline makes sense. I'm not kidding. Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. Yes, I'm sick. I waited all week to not be sick. It is Thursday at 5 p.m. I can't record any later. This is genuinely the best I've sounded in a week. Sorry. Now, admittedly, some of you might be confused, which is a valid response. What could I possibly mean when I say Secret of the Mimic gives me deja vu of Security Breach? Well, like I said, it's the rooms, the architecture. More and more as you look throughout this environment, you find echoes of each other. In fact, in my first playthrough of Secret of the Mimic, I didn't even notice this until one of the endings of the game. On the way down to the underground pizzeria for 2 of the 3 endings,
Let me guess. The secret ending where you go down to a secret Pizzaplex, a secret pizzeria is in both games. Obviously, in Security Breach, it's the burned down location of FNAF 6. And here, it is the prototype pizzeria where, I don't know, the Silver Eyes animatronic is the M2 from the books, the original trilogy of books.
you have to take the Welcome Show elevator, and that's when it hit me.
Not only that, but typically in these FNAF games, I've said this before, but ever since FNAF 3, where every single game has had multiple endings, just playing through the game normally, getting the normal ending is normally the bad ending. You normally have to go underneath the secret elevator shaft, go underneath the Pizzaplex, and get at all the Easter eggs, get all the secrets, get all the clues to find some hidden room, some hidden passageway to get the real true ending. It's always been like that ever since FNAF 3 was the first game where we had multiple endings, a good and a bad ending. And the good ending, you're forced to do extra stuff to get that.
This looks a lot like the main stage elevator from Security Breach, doesn't it? And it's not just a circular open elevator. I mean, the gears, the button in the center of the stage, the fact that it's an elevator in the middle of a show, it's all there. And just that would be strange enough. But that's what got me thinking. Is there anything else in this game that's strangely similar? And there is. The next thing that stood out to me is this Springlock assembly claw. It looks frighteningly similar to the scooper we see at the end of Ruin. Now, when we first saw this scooper in Ruin, a lot of us were confused on why, if it's supposed to be a scooper, does it look so different than the one we see in Sister Location, only for it to be revealed that we were right to point out that this is different because this machine doesn't seem to be inspired by this. It's inspired by the Springlock assembly claw from MCM. So what gives? I mean, we know that Fazbear is historically and provably.
Not only that, but I don't know if this is still a thing, but I remember when Security Breach Ruin first came out and we first saw that cutscene with the scooping room and we're like, wait, is this tied to the Sister Location bunker? Is this the same scooping room from the Sister Location bunker? Is this a mock-up, a different design that was inspired by That's This Location Bunker, but it's a completely separate entity. We don't know that. We talked about that in the last stream where we're like, FNAF 4, This Location, FNAF 6, the Pizza Plets, and the Secret Mimic are all connected if it is the same scooping room. We talked about that in the last video. But I don't know how true this is still, but when we first played Ruined and we saw that scooping room cutscene, some keen eyes looked at that and were like, wait, that is a very similar design. And let me see if I can pull it up, maybe. There was the Mimic, and then there was like the scooping claw behind it. And some keen people noticed that, that's very similar to the Burn Trap ending and Security Breach, where it's Burn Trap and then the blob behind it. Let me see if I can pull up a picture that shows. Okay, there we go. So you see it? Apologies for this black bar beside the screen on the monitor. But you can see on the left is the ending of Ruin, one of the endings, where on the left it's the Mimic endoskeleton inside the lion costume, and then behind it is the scooper. But then on the right is the Burn Trap burning the Pizza Plets ending at the end of Security Breach. It's Burn Trap on the left. And remember, some people have had the thought that Burn Trap is not William Afton. Burn Trap is connected to Glitch Trap. And remember, Glitch Trap may be tied to the Mimic. So, Mimic endoskeleton on the left of both sides, and then behind it is the blob. And you're like, oh, well, the blob isn't really connected to the scooper. And you'd be right. Except, if you remember how this cutscene plays out, the blob and the scooper, both things behind it, grab the evil villain Mimic entity. They both grab it from behind. Again, I don't know if that is still canon, that's still relevant, but I do remember that's something people talked about when Ruin first came out. So I'm just going to throw that in the ethos. Do that if you will, if whether it's true or not. But I remember it was a talking point, at least at one point.
Cheap to a fault. Man, I feel awful after that room.
Sorry, the stream is not Spawn.
Accusation that Fazbear is straight up reusing rooms. After all, we know for a near certain fact that these buildings are on the same plot of land. I mean, we know Fazbear bought up the property, and I mean, compare the lots visually, not to mention the fact that both of them have a fake pizzeria hidden underneath them. So if this is the same area, did they really reuse the same rooms? Well, no. First of all, they're not identical. Yes, these elevators share a lot of similarities, but the size and location just does not make sense. Same with these hooks. Like, the ceiling attachment and build of them are the same, but like needle, not needle. That alone, right? But even more direct on the visual comparison, look at the endings we have. In the ending that most people assume is the most likely canon ending, the one where we visit Murray's house and then face off against the Mimic, burn it all down and escape, I just said it. We burn it all down and escape. It looks like the majority of MCM is on fire when we're making our grand escape in the Cradle.exe ending. So even if they wanted to reuse these rooms, they'd be so fire damaged that it wouldn't be worth it. Trust me, my office job before doing...
I don't know, is the burning ending the most canon? Or is the canon ending the one where you get the 5 or 6 cassette tapes, and you put it into that projector room in Edwin's house, and then you get the Tiger Rock plushie, and you go into the bedroom that may or may not be inspired by the FNAF 4 bedroom, where you have to like press the 4 buttons of like the Fots, the Crocodile, and like the Chica in like a certain order to calm down David into M2 endoskeleton. Otherwise, I'll attack you. Or is that the canon ending? Because to me, again, I'm inclined to believe that's the canon ending. Because, again, like I said earlier in the very beginning of the stream, that ever since FNAF 3, typically history has shown us that the canon endings for these games are the ones where you're required to do the most amount of work. You're supposed to go out of bounds and do the most amounts of work. You're not getting the canon ending just by playing through the game normally and getting the ending. Like, that's not the normal ending. And FNAF 3, how you got the good ending was you play through the 8-bit minigames, you glitch through them to get the Happy Stay minigame, and you laid the souls to rest. FNAF 4, it's kind of difficult of what the canon ending is for there, so I'm going to avoid that one. And FNAF 5's location is the canon ending where you get tricked by Baby, enter the rest of the game, and you get scooped, and enter the rest of the game, use your skin suit, and you go out. Or is it you go into the secret entered room and you have the entered boss fight? Is that the ending? If FNAF 6, in order to get that very iconic Henry speech, you have to salvage all the animatronics and beat all of them. Lure them all to one place and burn it all down. In FNAF VR Help Wanted, in order to get the Pizza Party minigame, FNAF VR Help Wanted 1. I should reference that. FNAF VR Help Wanted 1, in order to get the Pizza Party minigame where you are introduced to Glitchtrap in his full form, and he lures you to the back room, and you're then stuffed in an animatronic suit, is you have to collect all the glitching tapes, all 16 of them. Security Breach, just simply leaving the Pizza Pletz at 6 a.m. is the bad ending. You have to put all the animatronic parts into Freddy and then go underneath the Pizza Pletz in the elevator in Ratsu Raceway to go to the FNAF 6 location and get the Burn Trap boss fight ending. Or you get the Princess Quest ending, which you have to beat all 3 Princess Quest games. That's the only 3-star ending. Either way, you're not just playing the game normally to get the good ending, normal canon ending. Ruin, simply escaping, is that the ending? Or is it the scooping ending, as we just talked about? Or is it the Jamaica ending, where you, Cassie, are putting the mask on and are tricked and subjected to the mask, allowing the mask to fully take you over? Let's see, what else? I'm going on a list. Help Wanted 2. I'm trying to remember with that game. You play all the games. There's one ending where you are stuffed into the mask bot at the beginning of Ruin, and you as Cassie's dad are the one handing Cassie the Vanny mask that would allow them to be subjected to torture, which is a very sad, tragic ending. But I can't remember what you're supposed to do to get that. Is this something with Mr. Hippo? I can't remember. I'm sorry. Again, I may remember a lot about the series, but some things eventually slip through the cracks. And to get the Mimic, again, just playing through the game normally. And after you do the Tiger Rock section, getting fired by Fazbear Entertainment and the Mimic attacking you is probably not the canon ending. So, I don't know. That all being said, what do you think is the canon ending of Seek of the Mimic? Is it the burn ending, or is it the one where you assemble the 5 or 6 highlight reels in the projector room, and then you go in the bedroom and lay M2 David to rest?
YouTube was a desk job at an asset management company, and all I did most days was look at pictures of damaged houses and decide if it's worth it for the bank to try to rebuild it or just bulldoze it. And fire damage was the #1 thing to look out for. Even if visually it's not that bad, there's enough structural integrity that's gone that trying to build anything on top of it will eventually crumble. It is cheaper, and that's the key here thing with Fazbear, not just safety. It is cheaper to bulldoze a burned property and build from the ground up than try to restore it. And to further prove this, we have evidence that there was buildings in between MCM and the Pizzaplex. It wasn't just one-to-one. I've made this argument plenty of times, but when you look at the Midnight Motorist map, if this is the Afton household, and this is the Afton household near MCM, this parking lot had Juniors in it. A lot of people, myself included, think that Juniors opened up inside of a Fredbear's or Freddy's closed location, which would mean that one of those was here as well. But all this to say, MCM would have had to burn down to make room for a Fredbear's or Freddy's to open up. So okay, in summary, there's plenty of evidence to show that these are not the same exact rooms. So then the question now becomes, why are they so similar? Well, I think we'll start to figure that out when we go over the other similarities with Security Breach and other games in this franchise, because there is a lot more than you think. Why are you so moody? Oh, there are other rooms in the Security Breach Pizzaplex that are reminiscent of another location, but this time they're not real locations. I'm talking about the Help Wanted rooms of Security Breach. Now, I'm not treading new ground here. These were found out pretty quickly after the game came out. Rooms that resemble the Plush Baby level, the Vent Repair level, the Dreadbear lobby, the Build a Mango minigame, and not for nothing, it's not from Help Wanted. I feel like Mike's room should go in here too. These rooms are just scattered in random side areas throughout the Pizzaplex. It's incredibly strange. Like, what the hell are these? Why are there bare bones recreations of Help Wanted minigames as rooms in the Security Breach Pizzaplex? And they're not recreations of the minigames, to be clear. These are just completely separate rooms. That Vent Repair room is likely a laundry room, but it looks like Vent Repair from Help Wanted. Why? Well, the only clue to this lies in one more thing that is reminiscent of something else in Security Breach, the Faz Wrench. We first see them in Ruin, but from Ruin and Help Wanted 2, it seems like most employees at the Pizzaplex utilized a Faz Wrench. This piece of technology that looks frighteningly similar to the Data Diver from Secret of the Mimic.
Yep. And when we first saw the Data Diver in the trailer for Secret of the Mimic, myself and a lot of others thought about it. It's like, was this a prototype that would later become the Faz Wrench?
The Data Diver is used all throughout Murray's Costume Manor by the employees. Almost like if you asked the Mimic what employees use, they would say Data Divers. And a piece of technology, one that in all 3 endings of Secret of the Mimic holds the schematics for the Mimic.
Because remember, the Security Breach, Ruin, Pizzaplex era takes place in like the 2020, 2030s. And Secret of the Mimic is canonically in like the 1970s, like 1972 or something like that, which is the earliest game in the timeline. So was the Data Diver a prototype for what later become the Faz Wrench at the Pizzaplex?
Hey,
not only that, but we also know that a lot of the game in Secret of the Mimic is copying things, taking a lot of technology from the Costume Manor and Fazbear Entertainment, repurposing it in the Glitch Trap Mimic software to the Data Diver. Right? Because remember, what do we hear about during development of the FNAF VR game, especially FNAF VR Help Wanted 1, is Fazbear Entertainment found a bunch of these like circuit boards and old technology, and they just simply scanned it in, trying to, cut costs and use it as a cost-saving measure and just to be more efficient. Hey, we don't have to program, manufacture all these things ourselves. We can just take this old hardware that already exists and just repurpose it ourselves, because Fazbear Entertainment is sleazy, but we know this.
You don't think that... So, am I saying the Mimic built the Pizzaplex? No. but I do think it influenced its design. Well, how would we know this? I feel like if we can assign involvement, ability, and opportunity, then I think it's a pretty valid accusation to say that the Mimic influenced the design of the Pizzaplex. And we already have 2 of the 3. There is already evidence of the Mimic's involvement with the fact that there's weird replication going on. The entire point of the Mimic is to see things and replicate them. And if we're seeing things in Security Breach's Pizzaplex being replicated, that's already fishy, let alone the fact that everything that's being replicated is things that would have been nearby the Mimic. Either it's stuff from Help Wanted, which the Mimic's program was in, or it's stuff from Murray's Costume Manor, which is where the Mimic was made. So the idea...
Also, another room I just thought of, if we're talking about recreating things, is in the Pizzaplex. When you first open the game, when you first leave Freddy's room, you're in that Rockstar Row area where you are outside all the animatronics rooms, and it's that long hallway where it's like, you have the cardboard cutouts from like the Fotsy Maze minigame from the Corn Maze minigame in FNAF VR. I'm pretty sure there's a poster from FNAF 1. I think even Bonnie's guitar from FNAF 1 is also like in those display cases. Like, it's all reminiscing of the original games. I just want to call that as another thing that is being replicated from old generations.
That things from the Mimic's life are being put into the Pizzaplex is clear evidence of its involvement. And as far as ability, like I mentioned, that's the entire purpose of the Mimic. The entire ability the Mimic has, I'm gonna blow your mind, is to mimic stuff. So we already have involvement and ability. The question now remains, and this is where the crux of this comes in, is there an opportunity? It's one thing to say that the Mimic would replicate things it knew in its past life if it was able to influence the design of the Pizzaplex. That's not a hard claim to make. The difficult part of this theory is when would it have had the opportunity to do so. And there's actually a decent explanation for this in the games and the books.
Not to add one more thing to involvement, but something I also did bring up earlier, is we know the animatronics are tied to the Mimic software. That's how Freddy's in safe mode and the other animatronics attack you, is because of the Mimic software. So that also is involvement.
And it's the same explanation. The Tales of the Pizzaplex short stories, while in their own separate continuity, do inform us a lot about the world of Five Nights at Freddy's. What is and isn't possible, what exists in this world, and one aspect of this world that's brought up a few times actually, but is really focused in the storyteller, is that the entire reason the Security Breach Mega Pizzaplex exists in the first place is some dumb, rich CEO had the bright idea that he could find a brand that was incredibly cheap, pump a bunch of money into it, make it a major brand, and sell it for a profit. And he picked the Fazbear brand. It was ran quick and as much as possible, to the point that in the story, the storyteller, this CEO is willing to fire the majority of the creative team. And
so it's basically one of the social media YouTube influencers with crypto scams, pump and dumps, where they come in, they make a BS Doge crypto Sit7 coin, they pump a bunch of money into it. A bunch of other people, by proxy, also pump a bunch of money into it. And then when it's at its highest value, they then leave, take all their money, and run, leaving everyone else holding the bag. This is a PSA for you. Don't invest in crypto or any of these BS, Doge, Sit7 Bitcoins, because they never work.
And replace it with an AI storyteller that he found in the Fazbear collection of stuff that he now owns. So, in other words, in the books, the current Fazbear CEO is a dumb, rich guy trying to make a quick buck who is willing to use AI found in Fazbear technology to replace human workers. Sound familiar? It should, because the exact same thing happens in the games, and we have reliable proof of it in Help Wanted. The tapes we hear throughout the entirety of Help Wanted is Tape Girl telling us that because the game was taking a long time to develop, Fazbear sent over proprietary old technology to scan into the game without any explanation, but they were told it would help them pad the animatronics. And it did, but it also formed Glitch Trap, because whatever this technology was had the Mimic's AI on it. So what old technology could they have possibly scanned in that had the Mimic's AI on it? Well, I think it's something that in every single ending of Secret of the Mimic has the Mimic schematics on it, the Data Diver. What exactly am I implying here? You are the Fazbear CEO.
Also, I don't know if this is going to be brought up, but another time we know in the Pizza Bots era where we hear about employees, Matt's entities getting fired, is in one of the emails or digital messages we get from the duffel bags in Security Breach. They talk about an all staff meeting, and it's widely assumed that Vanny, the bunny, uses the staff bots to off and get rid of all the human employees and replace them with staff bots because, hey, there needs to be less humans roaming around, and it's a lot easier to mimic and take over and manipulate mimic staff bot programming than actual humans. So let's just off all the human employees at the all staff meeting at like 11 p.m.
Snobby rich kid looking to get richer, and you just bought the Fazbear brand, one that was dirt cheap, and you know that if you fudge a couple numbers and muddy some waters, people will forget about that rancid past and come lining up for Freddy and the gang once again. And so far, you've been right. You made an entire VR game parodying the real-life crimes of this company, and everyone ate it up. You even got to use some of the old Fazbear technology, some weird Mimic AI thing, to speed up the coding process. You're a genius, dude. If it's not clear, I'm feeding into the ego of this guy. He is very stupid. So now it's time for your big swing. Public image is better than it's ever been. Let's make the Mega Pizzaplex. One issue, you don't know how to make a Mega Pizzaplex. What would a restaurant like that look like? What would it cost to make? And that's when it hits you. Why bother paying some architect to make a structurally sound building? We're trying to make money. And to make money, you gotta save money. And you know how you can save money? The same way you did with the VR game. Something you've already done in the past that we have clear and direct evidence of. Just do it again. Pull up that Mimic AI and be like, hey, make me a Pizzaplex. And it generates you some blueprints. All you gotta do is pay some schmucks to build it. This theory is positing that.
Well, I would say the one pushback, the one nitpick I have with this theory, because I'm not saying I disagree with it fully, but I would say the one linchpin that is sticking in my brain for it's like, well, but actually, is we know, again, in one of the duffel bag messages in Security Breach, they talk about of how during construction, the Pizzaplex was built on top of a sinkhole. And we know underneath the Pizzaplex is the burned down FNAF 6 location. And what is underneath the FNAF 6 location is burn trap in the power tank. So for some reason they intentionally built the Pizzaplex, this giant mall location, on top of a burned down location that houses the body of Burn Trap, the William Afton serial killer. Like, it was intentional. No, like, you don't just randomly, by pure coincidence, just so happen to build a mall Pizzaplex and just so happens to be on top of a location where it's housing the buried dead corpse of the serial killer purple guy. You don't just do it by pure coincidence accident. It was intentionally there. So I would say that's the one issue I have. It wasn't pure coincidence. Like, that's why you believe, like, is it Mrs. Afton pulling the strings? Is it Baby pulling the strings? Is it Vanessa, who was tied and being manipulated by Glitch William Afton to do his bidding, is doing these like schematics and blueprints and telling Fazbear workers where to build? Oh, build on top of that burned down FNAF location. Ah, who cares that's being on top of a building? Ah, who cares about a sinkhole? Just build it.
The Mimic AI was used to create the schematics for the Pizzaplex. Think about it. It makes perfect sense. First of all, we all know Scott is pretty anti-Gen AI, as most good people should be. Frankly, if you use generative AI, I think less of you as a person, and I stand on that. But Scott has a similar opinion, and this would mean that it fully explains why the Pizzaplex is such a shitty building. When you enter the front doors, the first thing you see is a closed down elevator that broke. When you go into the lower parking garages, they're caved in. This building is in constant states of falling apart and needing repair, and it's because the schematics were made by an AI, and that's why there's so many extra side rooms that don't add anything. It's the artifacting of the Mimix AI. It's like, well, we need a room here, I'll pull from my memory data bank, and it creates something, aka steals something it's seen, and puts it into the Pizzaplex.
That's an interesting take. To me, that's a lot like hindsight's 2020, because I remember when Security Breach came out. Let me rephrase. When Security Breach came out, there was a lot of pushback, a lot of negatives, a lot of criticisms, and I also am not afraid to admit that I was in that camp, that I was not overly positive and defending Steel Wool when Security Breach came out. And one of the issues with that is the game, despite how massive the Pizzaplex is, and it's the biggest map, biggest location that we as FNAF fans have ever experienced, it felt so hollow. It felt so empty. There were so many rooms that contributed nothing. You just walked past and you never thought about it again. Like, for instance, example I can think of is when you're doing the Music Man section where you're trying to power up the 3 power nodes in the arcade room. You run past a lot of arcade machines. You run past a lot of karaoke, dancing rooms. The game doesn't bring it up. You never go into those locations again, but those rooms did exist. Another example, beside the daycare section, there's a giant theater room where a staff bot is giving a community stand-up comedy stand-up routine. And it's another room where it's a giant empty room. You never encounter, you never walk to that room again, but that room was built. But it felt like a waste of space because it's a giant room that just contributes to nothing. It's like, why is this even here? You run to the room once, you're like, okay, that's cool, he's doing a stand-up routine, and you never go back again, and you don't even realize that room even exists until I brought it up just now. You probably forgot that room even exists until I brought it up. That's the point. When Security Breach came out, it was hollow because there are so many rooms that you go to once and you never think about it again. And that was an issue because, again, Security Breach was delayed 3-4 times. And then when you get the game, you have all these rooms that are empty, are hollow, that contribute nothing, that mean nothing, that matter absolutely nothing. It just feels like a hollow shell. And I also remember during the development process of Security Breach, one of the reasons why the game was delayed is Steel Wool was trying to mass upscale this game, and they got too big, too grand, and Scott told them to, hey, reel it back in a little bit. We're getting a little bit too out there. So I wonder what even them scaling it back, what originally the game was, if the game was hollow. So I don't know about this whole thing about hindsight's 2020 explaining why a valid criticism of the game of it being hollow, where you run to these rooms once, you never think about it again. Trying to explain it in a lore implication, I don't know. I don't know about that. That's That's where you start to lose me, personally.
It's exactly why there is an official Pizzaplex door whose entire purpose is to go into a staircase that leads to a cave that heads towards the old pizzeria. Hell, this could be what Steel Wool was referring to in the very first Dawko interview. A few days before Security Breach came out, two of the leads at Steel Wool took up an interview with Dawko to talk about the upcoming FNAF game. And one of the last questions was, is there anything you can hint to us about Security Breach, even if it's one word? And they said schematics. Maybe this is what Ray McCaffrey was talking about. Maybe these are the schematics. The idea, the hint, was that this entire game only takes place because the secret main villain of this entire arc, who at this point we didn't really know existed, built the building we're inside of. The very foundation of the Pizzaplex bleeds the Mimic, and it's something we wouldn't even get to know until several years later. So that's my thinking. Fazbear retained the data diver, and that's where the copy of the Mimic schematics are on, and they use that in the creation of the Pizzaplex to not have to hire a contractor to make the actual schematics, which then explains so much about the weirdness of the Mega Pizzaplex building and why it doesn't make any sense and it's constantly falling apart. And frankly, I really believe this theory, and I kind of forgot I was holding this too. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Am I losing my mind or am I onto something here? Also, again, apologies for sick voice.
All right. But again, it's not like they're criticisms that I hate the video or I hate the theory. I just bring up those criticisms, hell, you can even call them nitpicks if you believe they are nitpicks, and I'm just being a big asshole and I'm just pointing to problems that don't exist. I'm just trying to make a problem out of something. It's not that I'm making problems out of something, it's that I'm offering a different perspective, a different viewpoint of, well, yes, but actually no. Yes. On one hand, FNAF is popular for, having these, very obscure questions, very little answers being confirmed, and that is what gets all of us this adrenaline, dopamine rush of trying to get answers, because, the more we dig deep and the closer we get to answers, the more satisfying it feels when you get to an answer that feels satisfying, and you're just filled with this big adrenaline dopamine rush where it's, okay, I was able to solve this, now I want to find these other 3-4 questions that we've always had a question on, and it just gets more and more addicting as you get more and more games, as you get more and more consumed by the series, since we're going on to over 11 years at this point. So that's all well and good, but at the same time though, having an explanation for everything in the series, especially criticisms for how the game was received, I don't know if I can lead into that for explanation for story and timeline work. That's where you start to lose me a bit. Because, again, like I brought up earlier, that if it is the Mimic who's tied to, building the Pizzaplex, does that then mean, I'm going to pose this question as we're wrapping up and everything. So let's just take this as a literal thing. The Mimic is the head, and he's tied to the creation of the Pizzaplex. So then who's the new CEO of Fazbear Entertainment? Who is the high up that gets Vanessa, the security guard, hired, even though they have zero qualifications, but they were forced to be hired at the Pizzaplex? And we know the reason why they were forced to be hired is because Vanessa had the glitch trap virus inside of her to help them out. So who's the CEO? The Mimic? Who's it supposed to be then? So I'm going to pose that question for you as we're wrapping up here. Does that then mean the Mimic is a CEO who's tied to the hiring of Vanessa? What do you think about that? Am I on the right track, or am I even crazier?